Nobody believed the small girl in the purple hoodie when she said she could help land the plane. They thought she was just a scared child playing pretend. But when she walked into that cockpit and started calling out F-16 emergency procedures, everyone realized this 11-year-old kid was for survival. Before you watch full 47 as 11-year-old Maya Chin settled into seat 14A, clutching her worn tablet and a backpack covered in cartoon patches. The flight attendant, Jennifer, leaned down with that special voice adults use for children. "Are you doing okay, sweetie? It's a long flight to Denver. Do you have games on your tablet?" Maya nodded politely, offering a shy smile. Jennifer patted her shoulder and moved on, never imagining this quiet child could be anything other than what she appeared. Maya watched her walk away before returning to the tablet. On the screen was a detailed technical manual with complex diagrams, but she quickly switched to a puzzle game as an elderly woman glanced over. The woman smiled at the sweet child playing innocent games, having no idea that seconds before, Maya had been studying emergency procedures for high-performance aircraft. No one on this plane knew anything real about her. They saw a small girl with dark hair and braids, wearing a purple hoodie with sparkles and light-up sneakers. They saw someone who needed help with the overhead bin, someone who ordered apple juice, someone completely harmless. What they could not see was the ghost living behind her eyes. For 3 years, Maya had fallen asleep reading her father's flight manuals, the same ones he used flying F-16 Fighting Falcons for the Air Force. Colonel James Chin had been one of the best fighter pilots in his squadron, and he had started teaching Maya about flying when she was 7. Not to push her into a career, but because she begged to understand what he did when he disappeared for months. Those lessons started simple with basic aerodynamics, but Maya's hunger for knowledge was insatiable. By age 9, she was reading actual F-16 flight manuals. Then came the training accident that took him forever. A routine exercise gone wrong, mechanical failure at the worst moment. Colonel Chin stayed with his crippled aircraft long enough to steer it away from populated areas before ejecting too late. Maya was 10 when uniformed officers came to their door. Her mother collapsed into endless grief, but Maya responded differently. She took every manual, every notebook, every training document her father owned and consumed them with desperate obsession. Learning the F-16 became her way of keeping him alive. Now at 11, Maya knew things that would shock adults around her. She had memorized F-16 emergency procedures, understood its weapon systems, could recite steps for recovering from flat spins or handling engine fires at 30,000 feet. She knew tactical formation flying, air-to-air combat principles, emergency landing procedures most commercial pilots never encountered. Her father had given her secret simulator time on base, sessions logged as family activities, but actually intensive training where she learned to read heads-up displays, manage throttles, think 3 steps ahead. He once joked she was the youngest F-16 pilot who would never be allowed to actually fly one. The Boeing 737 rumbled down the runway at Chicago O'Hare. Maya felt the familiar pressure as engines spooled to full power. She counted seconds, estimating speed, knowing the pilots watched for V1, the decision speed, the point of no return. The nose lifted and ground fell away. Around her, passengers settled into routines. The businessman opened his laptop. A mother quieted a crying baby. Teenagers laughed too loudly in back. No one noticed the small girl in 14A watching wing flaps with the focused attention of someone who understood exactly what they were doing. 2 hours into the flight over Iowa, Maya was deep into a chapter about display symbology when Jennifer approached again. "How are you doing, honey? Need anything?" Maya switched screens just in time. "I'm okay, thank you." Jennifer's eyes softened. "Visiting your dad in Denver?" The question hit hard, but Maya had learned to handle it. "Visiting family," she said quietly. Jennifer moved on, never knowing she had just reminded a child of the worst day of her life. In the cockpit, Captain Richard Morrison sat in the left seat, 28 years of experience making everything automatic. Next to him, First Officer Sarah Collins monitored instruments and handled radio. They were crossing Nebraska airspace at 37,000 feet in clear skies. Everything was perfectly normal. Morrison reached for his coffee and felt a strange flutter in his chest. He frowned. Probably caffeine jitters. The flutter came again, stronger, and his left arm suddenly felt heavy. He tried to shake it off, but dizziness washed over him. "Sarah," he said, his voice wrong. Collins looked over, eyes wide. "Captain?" Morrison tried to respond, but words wouldn't come. His chest felt crushed by steel bands. The world tilted and everything went black. In the passenger cabin, no one noticed at first. The plane continued smooth flight. But in the cockpit, chaos erupted. Collins grabbed Morrison as he slumped forward, hands sliding off the yoke, face gray and sweating. "Richard." "Captain Morrison." She yanked him back, fingers searching for a pulse and finding one rapid and irregular. She hit the call button while taking full control. Her training kicked in, endless simulator drills, but her hands shook because this was real, actually happening, 7 miles up with 147 people counting on her. Jennifer burst through the cockpit door and stopped dead. "Oh my God. What happened?" Collins kept eyes on instruments, trimming the aircraft. "Heart attack, I think. Get him out of that seat. Is there a doctor on board?" Jennifer called for help over the PA, and within seconds another attendant and a nurse crowded in, working to unbuckle Morrison and lay him out where they could attempt CPR. Collins focused on flying, running through options, and every single one was bad. She could fly the 737 alone. That was not the problem. But Morrison had been entering new routing when he collapsed. She did not know what or why, meaning she needed to start over with navigation while dealing with this crisis. She needed to declare an emergency, coordinate with ATC for priority landing, manage panicking passengers, all while watching her captain possibly die 3 feet away. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but her mind raced. Behind her, the nurse did chest compressions while Jennifer held an oxygen mask to Morrison's face. Collins shut out the sounds because if she thought about Morrison dying she would lose concentration. She keyed the radio. "Denver Center, Flight 2847 declaring emergency. Captain incapacitated. Requesting immediate priority handling and vectors to nearest suitable airport." The controller's voice came back instantly. "Flight 2847, Denver Center copies emergency. Nearest suitable is North Platte Regional, 70 miles northeast. Turn right heading 045, descend and maintain flight level 240. Collins acknowledged and began the turn, scanning for any aircraft trouble. Everything functioned normally, the only good news in this nightmare. But as she started descending, a new problem emerged. Morrison had been reprogramming their route because of weather ahead, storms she now needed to navigate around, and she had no time to figure out his plan. Weather radar painted angry red cells off to their right, thunderstorms standing between them and North Platte like a wall. She would have to navigate around them manually while handling everything else. Behind her, the nurse looked up with devastation. "I'm sorry. He's not responding. I'm a geriatric nurse, not a doctor. I don't know if..." Collins cut her off firmly. "Keep trying. We're landing in 20 minutes. She hoped that was true. For the first time in her career, Sarah Collins felt real bone-deep fear. Jennifer stood at the front with shaking hands, figuring out what to say. Passengers had noticed the commotion. She made the announcement she hoped she would never make. "Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Morrison has experienced a medical emergency and we are diverting. First Officer Collins is fully qualified to land the aircraft. Please remain calm and stay seated with seatbelts fastened." The words were meant to reassure but had the opposite effect. The cabin erupted in gasps and frightened murmurs. The businessman across from Maya stood up, face red with panic. "What do you mean the captain had an emergency? Who's flying the plane?" Maya watched with strange calmness. She had seen fear before in her mother's eyes when officers came to the door. She knew what panic looked like spreading through the cabin like a virus. But she could also see something else. The plane was descending, meaning the co-pilot was executing emergency procedures. From the sun angle through windows, they had turned northeast toward the nearest airport. Engine note changes indicated throttles coming back. Everything told her First Officer Collins knew exactly what she was doing and was handling this correctly. But Maya also saw weather building outside. Dark thunderheads on the horizon, the kind her father taught her to respect and avoid. Commercial pilots were trained to navigate around severe weather, but that required time and mental bandwidth, 2 things the co-pilot might not have. Maya bit her lip, thinking through the problem the way her father taught her. Multiple threats, limited resources, time-critical decisions. The co-pilot was task-saturated, dealing with too many problems at once. Weather would force course deviations, complicating an already difficult approach. No one else on this plane understood aviation enough to help. Jennifer's voice came over the PA again, barely concealed desperation. "If there is anyone on board with aviation experience, please identify yourself immediately." Maya felt her heart pound. That announcement meant Collins needed help, needed someone who understood flying, needed another mind that could think through aviation problems. Adults around her looked at each other with wild eyes, but no one moved. The businessman sat down heavily, corporate confidence useless. College kids froze with fear. An elderly couple held hands and prayed. Maya's hand moved to unbuckle her seatbelt, but she stopped, doubt flooding through her. She was 11 years old. A child. Yes, she had studied F-16 manuals obsessively for 3 years, and yes, her father taught her things most adults never learned, but she had never actually flown anything real except simulator sessions. Never been responsible for an actual aircraft with actual lives at stake. She was just a kid who missed her dad and tried to keep him alive by learning everything he knew. What could she possibly do that a professional co-pilot could not do better? But then she thought about what her father used to say about fear. Courage was not absence of fear but the decision to act despite it. In an F-16 cockpit, there was no time for self-doubt, only action based on training. The worst thing any pilot could do in an emergency was freeze, let fear win, choose an action even when action might fail. Maya could almost hear his voice, calm and steady. Maya Bear, what do we know about emergencies? Perfect solutions are rare. Any action is usually better than no action. We use what we have, even if it's not everything we wish we had. She stood up. Every eye in her section turned to her with confusion. The businessman actually laughed, slightly hysterical. Sit down, kid. This is serious. But Maya ignored him and walked forward, light-up sneakers flashing with each step, looking absurdly childish in the crisis atmosphere. Jennifer saw her coming and moved to intercept with that gentle but firm adult tone. Sweetie, you need to sit down and buckle up. We're in an emergency and, Maya interrupted, and her voice was not a scared child's but something else entirely. I know about flying. I need to talk to First Officer Collins. Jennifer blinked, processing this impossible statement. Honey, I know you're scared, but adults are handling this. You need to go back to your seat. Maya felt frustration rising. She did not have time to convince people she was not just a scared kid playing pretend. My father was Colonel James Chin, F-16 pilot. He taught me. I know emergency procedures and tactical aviation. I might be able to help. Something in her tone made Jennifer hesitate. Another attendant, Marcus, came forward. Jennifer, what's going on? Jennifer looked between them. This girl says she knows about flying. Says her father was a fighter pilot. Marcus looked down at Maya with obvious skepticism. Kid, this isn't a game. Real people could die if... Maya was not going to be dismissed again. She looked directly at Marcus. First Officer Collins is task-saturated. She's managing aircraft control, navigation around weather, emergency communications, and coordinating the captain's medical crisis. The announcement asking for aviation experience means she knows she needs help. I have knowledge that could be useful. If I'm wrong, I'll sit down. But if I'm right and you don't let me try, people die anyway. The logic delivered in such adult terms from a child's mouth stopped both attendants. Marcus and Jennifer exchanged a long look. Finally, Jennifer made a decision against every instinct about unaccompanied minors. Marcus, stay with the captain. I'm taking her up. She led Maya toward the cockpit, and passengers watching this impossible scene had no idea what to think. A child was walking into the cockpit during an emergency. It was surreal, illogical, impossible. The cockpit door opened and Jennifer brought Maya inside where Collins was fighting to save the aircraft. Collins glanced back, saw a child in a purple hoodie, and her face went through rapid expressions. Confusion, anger, disbelief. What is this? Jennifer, I need help, not... Maya spoke before Jennifer could explain, voice steady despite racing fear. First Officer Collins, my name is Maya Chin. My father was Colonel James Chin, F-16 pilot with the 35th Fighter Squadron. He trained me extensively. I understand you're dealing with multiple emergencies and I think I can help. Collins stared for a heartbeat that felt like an hour. Could this possibly be real? Could a child know anything useful? But Collins was also desperate, drowning in tasks. You know about F-16s? Her voice was sharp, testing. Maya nodded. Yes, ma'am. Primary flight controls, emergency procedures, tactical systems, emergency landing protocols. Collins made a snap decision. Fine. Jennifer, strap her into the jump seat. Kid, if you're lying to me, I swear to God. Maya was already moving to the small fold-down seat behind the pilot positions. From the jump seat, Maya could see everything. Instrument panels, weather radar painting angry storms ahead, multitude of switches and displays controlling the 737. It was different from F-16 systems but underlying principles were the same. Aircraft were aircraft. Physics was physics. Collins was flying manually now, hands tight on the yoke, eyes flicking between instruments and weather. Okay kid, you wanna help? Tell me what you see. Maya looked at the situation with fresh eyes, the way her father taught her to assess tactical problems. Your task saturated, Maya said calmly. Too many jobs for one person. You need someone to handle secondary tasks so you can focus on flying. Collins let out a breath that might have been a laugh. Yeah, no kidding. I need to navigate around weather, talk to ATC monitor systems, and I can't do all of it while hand flying in turbulence. Maya unbuckled and moved forward. I can manage communications and read instruments. Tell me what you need called out. Collins hesitated only a second before making another impossible decision. Fine. Monitor altitude and airspeed. Call out if we deviate from assigned altitude by more than 100 feet or if airspeed drops below 180 knots. Maya positioned herself where she could see primary flight instruments. These were different displays than the F-16's heads-up system, but the information was fundamentally the same. Altitude, airspeed, heading, vertical speed. She had been reading instruments like these since age 8. Altitude 24,000 feet, descending. Airspeed 190 knots, stable. Collins nodded, attention now fully on weather radar and the path ahead. Good. Keep calling it. The aircraft shuddered as they hit turbulence. Okay Maya. I need to deviate around this storm line. I'm turning 15 degrees right. Look at the navigation display and tell me what the distance reads after I turn. Maya found the moving map display. Ready. Collins banked the aircraft. Maya read the display. 92 miles to destination. Estimated time 18 minutes at current speed. Collins did mental math. Too long. I need to go faster but can't push engines too hard in turbulence. Maya, in your F-16 training did your dad teach you about energy management? Speed versus altitude trade-offs. Maya felt recognition spark. Yes ma'am. In the F-16, you manage total energy by trading altitude for speed or speed for altitude. Descend to gain speed without increasing power, or climb to slow down without reducing power. Collins nodded sharply. Same principle here. We're high and need to lose altitude anyway. I'm going to increase descent rate and let gravity speed us up. Watch airspeed and tell me if we exceed 250 knots maximum safe speed. Maya watched as Collins pushed the nose down. Airspeed began climbing. 190. 200. 210. The aircraft was picking up speed as it fell, using gravity to accelerate without stressing engines. 220. 230. Maya kept eyes locked. 240 knots. Approaching maximum. Collins pulled back slightly. Good. We're going to make it. But then the radio crackled with new problems. Flight 2847 Denver Center. Weather at North Platte deteriorating rapidly. Winds 30 knots gusting 45, visibility 2 miles and heavy rain. Runway 28 cleared for approach. Collins cursed under her breath. A 45-knot gusting crosswind was at the 737's landing limits, maybe beyond them. 2 miles visibility meant she would barely see the runway until almost on top of it. This was worst case, stacking problems on problems. Maya could see tension in Collins' shoulders, white knuckles on the yoke. First Officer Collins, Maya said quietly, something in her voice making the pilot look at her. My father used to say that in emergencies you fly the aircraft first, navigate second, communicate third. You're trying to do all three at once. Let me help with navigation and communication. You just fly. Collins looked at this 11-year-old who somehow sounded like every instructor pilot she had ever had, and made a decision that might end her career if it went wrong but might save everyone if it went right. Okay. You handle the radio. Use this handheld. Call ATC and tell them we copy weather information and our continuing approach. Use proper radio protocol. Maya took the handset, heart pounding, and keyed the microphone the way she heard her father do it 1,000 times. Denver Center, Flight 2847. We copy the weather at North Platte, continuing approach to runway 28. Her voice was clearly a child's voice. There was a long pause before the controller responded. Flight 2847 Denver Center. Say again, who is speaking? Maya looked at Collins, who nodded. Denver Center, this is an additional crew member assisting First Officer Collins with communications during the emergency. Another pause longer. Copy that, 2847. You are cleared to contact North Platte Tower on frequency 118.7. Good luck. Maya wrote down the frequency, then looked at Collins. They're handing us off to tower. Collins was busy configuring the aircraft for approach, extending flaps and landing gear, slowing to approach speed. Okay, change the radio to that frequency. The dial is there. Then call tower and tell them we're 10 miles out for runway 28, emergency landing. Maya's hands shook slightly, changing the frequency, but her voice was steady. North Platte Tower, flight 2847, 10 miles out for runway 28, emergency landing. The response was immediate. Flight 2847, North Platte Tower, runway 28 cleared to land, winds 310 at 35 gusting 43, emergency equipment standing by. Maya acknowledged and repeated the information to Collins, who nodded grimly. The aircraft bucked in turbulence, descending through 15,000 feet. Rain began hammering the windscreen. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Collins was flying entirely on instruments now. Altitude 10,000 feet, Maya called out. Airspeed 145 knots. Descent rate 700 feet per minute. Collins was hand-flying the approach, making constant tiny corrections for wind shoving them around. Maya, I need you to watch the localizer and glide slope. Those displays there. If the needles aren't centered, tell me which way and how much. Maya found the instruments, saw crossed needles showing whether they were left or right of runway centerline, above or below correct glide path. Localizer centered, glide slope centered, Maya reported. The aircraft dropped through rough air and needles jumped. Localizer drifting left, 1 dot. Glide slope still centered. Collins corrected right, fighting wind. Good. Keep calling it. 5,000 feet, Maya called. Airspeed 130 knots. Localizer centered, glide slope centered. They were getting close. Somewhere below in rain and clouds was an airport where rescue equipment waited and where they had one chance to get this right. 4,000 feet. Airspeed 125. Localizer and glide slope centered. Collins deployed more flaps. 3,000 feet. Airspeed 120. Localizer and glide slope centered. Maya's voice was mechanical now, focused entirely on the task, no room for fear or doubt. She was doing exactly what her father trained her for. Be the extra eyes, call the instruments, give the pilot needed information. 2,000 feet, Maya said, voice cracking slightly. Airspeed 115. Localizer and glide slope centered. They punched through cloud bottom and suddenly ground was visible, rushing up at terrifying speed. I have the runway, Collins said, voice tight. Visual. Maya could see it too, the thin gray line of concrete ahead. But they were high, too high, and wind was pushing them right. Collins banked left to correct, dropped the nose to lose altitude faster. Altitude 1,000 feet, Maya called, fear creeping in now. Descent rate 1,200 feet per minute. Airspeed 110. 800 feet. Descent rate 1,000. Airspeed 110. They were close now, so close. 500 feet. Descent rate 800. Collins pulled back, flaring the aircraft, trying to arrest descent and slow for touchdown. Wind hit them with a brutal gust, rolling the aircraft 30 degrees left. Collins slammed the yoke right, stomped the rudder, fighting to keep wings level. Come on, come on, come on, she muttered. 300 feet, Maya said, gripping her seat with white knuckles. Airspeed 100. They were seconds from either landing or crashing. 100 feet, Maya called, and Collins pulled the nose up, engines roaring as she added power. 50 feet. The runway was right there, and Maya closed her eyes for just a second, thinking of her father. The main landing gear struck the runway with jarring impact that rattled every bolt. The nose gear slammed down a moment later. Collins immediately deployed spoilers and thrust reversers. The 737 fishtailed as wind caught them, but Collins corrected, keeping them on centerline. They were slowing, speed bleeding off, and then they were rolling at taxi speed with emergency vehicles racing alongside, and Collins was laughing with relief as she turned off the runway and brought the aircraft to a complete stop. We're down, Collins said, voice shaking. We're down. We're alive. She turned to look at Maya, tears streaming down her face. You did that. You helped save us. Maya just nodded, unable to speak, adrenaline draining out and leaving her feeling hollow and exhausted. Emergency responders swarmed the aircraft. Paramedics rushed Morrison to an ambulance. Passengers evacuated down emergency slides into rain, shocked and grateful and alive. Collins shut down engines and sat for a long moment, hands still shaking. Then she unbuckled and pulled Maya into a hug that felt like it might break the girl's ribs. How? Collins finally asked. How does an 11-year-old know how to do what you just did? Maya's voice was small. My dad taught me. Before he died. He said that knowledge was the only thing nobody could take away from me. Collins pulled back to look at her, understanding dawning. Colonel Chin. I heard about that accident. He was a hero. Saved lives by staying with his aircraft. Maya nodded, tears finally breaking free. He taught me to fly even though I'd never be old enough to do it for real. He taught me to be brave when I was scared. He taught me that being small doesn't mean you can't do big things. The cockpit door opened and Jennifer rushed in, followed by crew members and airport officials. Everyone talked at once, asking questions, trying to understand. Maya found herself being led through the aircraft past passengers who stared with expressions ranging from disbelief to awe to gratitude. The businessman who had laughed at her stopped her, eyes red with emotion. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you. You saved my life." Maya did not know what to say, so she just nodded and kept moving. Outside the aircraft, standing in rain with emergency lights flashing everywhere, Maya looked up at the 737 that had nearly become a tomb. She thought about her father, about all those nights studying his manuals, about simulator sessions where he taught her to think like a pilot. She had done it. She had used what he taught her to save lives, to matter in a way that made the learning and grief and obsessive studying all mean something. She had honored him in the most real way possible. A paramedic approached with a blanket and warm cocoa. "You okay, sweetheart?" That must have been scary. Maya took the blanket and cocoa, but her answer came from somewhere beyond childhood. "My dad used to say that scared and safe can happen at the same time. You just have to choose to act." Later, after interviews and medical checks and endless questions from officials who could barely process what happened, Maya sat in the terminal wrapped in an emergency blanket too big for her. Her aunt was driving from Denver, still 3 hours away. First Officer Sarah Collins sat down next to her, out of uniform now, looking exhausted but alive. "I talked to my supervisor," Collins said, "and the FAA and about a dozen other people. You're going to be famous. Child hero assists in emergency landing. The media is going to go crazy." Maya sipped her hot chocolate. "I don't want to be famous. I just wanted to help." Collins smiled. "I know. But you're going to be anyway. Listen, Maya. What you did today was extraordinary. But it was also incredibly dangerous. You could have distracted me or given me wrong information or panicked at the wrong moment." Maya nodded. "I know. But my dad taught me that when you have knowledge that can save lives, you have a responsibility to use it. Even if it's scary. Even if people don't believe you at first." Collins was quiet for a moment. "Your father taught you well. When we land a plane successfully, we call it greasing it. Today wasn't exactly smooth, but we got down safely and everyone is alive. That's because you were there." She reached into her bag and pulled out something that made Maya's breath catch. It was Collins' pilot wings, the small pin commercial pilots wore on their uniforms. "I want you to have these. When you're old enough, if you decide you want to fly for real, you call me. I'll make sure you get a recommendation to the best aviation program in the country." Maya took the wings with shaking hands, feeling their weight, understanding what they represented. "Thank you," she whispered. Collins stood, put a hand on Maya's shoulder, and walked away to deal with the mountain of paperwork ahead. Maya sat alone in the terminal, holding the wings, thinking about her father and about the future and about the incredible, impossible thing that had happened today. She had been just a kid on a plane, invisible and dismissed and underestimated. Until the moment when her hidden knowledge became the difference between life and death. The news broke within hours. By evening, Maya's face was on every major news channel. "Child pilot assists in emergency landing," the headlines read. 11-year-old's fighter jet knowledge saves commercial flight. The story seemed too incredible to be true, but cockpit recordings and testimony from Collins and passengers confirmed every detail. Maya became an overnight sensation, interviewed by major networks, invited to speak at aviation conferences, offered scholarships to flight schools. But through all of it, she remained the same quiet girl who just missed her father and tried to honor his memory by learning what he loved. Years later, when Maya Chin graduated from the Air Force Academy at the top of her class and received her commission as a second lieutenant, First Officer Collins was there to watch. When Maya completed F-16 training and earned her wings as a fighter pilot, Collins was there again. And when Maya took her first solo flight in an F-16, the same aircraft her father had flown, she performed a roll over the runway that would have made Colonel James Chin burst with pride. She was no longer just a kid with knowledge she could not use. She was a pilot, for real, and every time she climbed into that cockpit she remembered the day when being small and young and dismissed had not stopped her from being exactly what everyone needed. The story of Flight 2847 became legend in aviation circles, taught in crew resource management classes as an example of thinking outside the box during emergencies. Maya's contribution was analyzed and debated. Some said Collins had been reckless to accept help from a child. Others argued that in extreme situations, you use whatever resources are available. But everyone agreed on one thing. Maya Chin had proven that expertise is not limited by age, that sometimes children see possibilities adults miss, and that knowledge, when combined with courage, can change the outcome of situations that seem hopeless. Captain Richard Morrison survived his heart attack, though he never flew again. He sent Maya a handwritten letter months later, his words shaky but sincere. "You gave me a second chance at life," he wrote. "You gave my grandchildren more years with their grandfather. I will never forget what you did, and I will spend the rest of my life telling people that heroes come in all sizes." Maya kept that letter in a frame next to her father's photo, a reminder that the skills he taught her had real meaning, had saved real lives. The passengers of Flight 2847 stayed connected over the years, forming a bond that only shared trauma can create. They met annually on the anniversary of the emergency landing, gathered in North Platte to remember and celebrate. The businessman who had laughed at Maya started a scholarship fund for children interested in aviation, naming it the Colonel James Chin Memorial Scholarship, in honor of Maya's father. Every year, 3 students received full funding for flight training, with Maya helping to select recipients who showed the same passion for aviation that had driven her as a child. Maya's story inspired thousands of young people around the world. She received letters from children on every continent, kids who told her she had given them permission to take their dreams seriously, to believe their knowledge mattered, to imagine themselves in roles that seemed impossibly adult. She answered every letter personally, sharing her father's wisdom, encouraging them to study what they loved with intensity and dedication. "You never know when your moment will come," she would write. "So stay ready. Learn everything you can. Be brave when it counts." As Maya grew older, she never lost touch with First Officer Collins, who became not just a mentor but a second mother figure. Collins was there for Maya's high school graduation, her acceptance to the Air Force Academy, every major milestone. They flew together when schedules aligned, Collins now a senior captain and Maya eventually a decorated combat pilot. They would laugh about that impossible day, but beneath the humor was genuine respect and the unbreakable bond between two people who had survived something extraordinary together. Maya eventually wrote a book about her experience, but it was not about glory or fame. It was about grief and learning and the way knowledge could transform pain into purpose. "My father died doing what he loved," she wrote in the final chapter. "And in teaching me to love it too, he gave me the tools to honor his memory in the most meaningful way possible. On that terrible, beautiful day in the sky, I was not just saving passengers. I was proving that the hours he spent teaching me, the patience he showed, the knowledge he shared, all of it mattered. All of it had purpose. And that is the greatest gift any parent can give a child." The wings Collins had given her hung on Maya's wall throughout her life, in a frame alongside her father's pilot wings and eventually her own F-16 wings. 3 generations of silver wings, representing the chain of teaching and learning and courage that defined her existence. When her own daughter asked to learn about flying, Maya said yes without hesitation, understanding that knowledge passed between generations was a form of immortality, a way of keeping loved ones alive even after they were gone. Maya never forgot that day, the rain and fear and impossible weight of responsibility. She never forgot calling out instruments while her hands shook, or the moment when wheels touched down and she knew they had survived. Most importantly, she never forgot why she had studied those manuals so obsessively. It was not just to keep her father's memory alive, though it had been that too. It was because somewhere deep inside, even at 8 years old listening to him explain lift and drag, she understood that knowledge was power. And when you had power, you had responsibility. In the end, Maya Chin had been just a kid until the pilot passed out mid-air. Then she revealed she could fly F-16s, and in doing so, she changed not only the fate of 147 passengers but the trajectory of her own life and the lives of countless young people who learned that capability has no age limit, that courage comes in all sizes, and that sometimes the hero the world needs is hiding in plain sight, wearing a purple hoodie with sparkles and light-up sneakers, carrying knowledge that no one expects but everyone desperately needs. She had proven that you never know what you are capable of until the moment arrives that demands everything you have. And when that moment came for Maya Chin, she was ready.